Baron Corbin's WWE run ended after 12 years. He seemed like one of those guys who would be in the mix for as long as he wanted to be, but it looks like that simply wasn't meant to be. It's one of the more disappointing WWE exits that we've seen in recent times, as Corbin really earned his way into becoming one of the more well-liked figures in the locker room, and among fans, maybe one of the most equally booed. Think about it. The man who all those years ago got booed relentlessly and was being criticized himself got accepted by a larger fan base simply for sticking it out and becoming a better performer through all of it, only to flounder because of circumstances that were completely out of his control. So what went wrong? How did WWE end up maybe letting Baron Corbin fall through the cracks? This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin Kelm. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you have a favorite Baron Corbin match or moment? Sound off. Let us know. Come on. Get down there. You got the keyboard. Here's the keyboard. That's you typing a comment. Go ahead. Baron Corbin took the route that many have taken before reaching the WWE: professional football. He played as an offensive guard, and although he was undrafted, he got signed to the practice squad of the Indianapolis Colts in 2009. It was a short-lived stint that saw him get released a few months later. He suffered the same fate with the Arizona Cardinals. Corbin admitted that he lost his passion for playing football, but he didn't lose the same desire to have those same type of adrenaline rushes from performing in some way. Corbin also had athletic pursuits in boxing and grappling, and at 6'6" and 284 pounds, he had the physical frame for another platform, professional wrestling. He reportedly almost chose UFC over a path in pro wrestling, but the manager of a rock band got him in direct contact with the WWE. That led to a tryout, and boom, he was suddenly in the developmental side of WWE. Independent wrestlers were clamoring for opportunities and getting them in the hotter and hotter than ever before WWE NXT, and there was Baron Corbin, a complete outlier amongst the people he was performing with. In a field of relatively more experienced wrestlers, Corbin had a chip on his shoulder. You have to remember, he had zero experience in wrestling when he signed with the WWE. His development took some time, and even when he was in televised debuts in 2013, he was an enhancement talent. That run lasted for a little while before Corbin wasn't ready for the bigger spot. But in the summer of 2014, after he was reportedly removed from television for almost half a year, he was repackaged and got a spot on NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Ways card, where he beat CJ Parker, who you probably now know as Juice Robinson in AEW. Triple H, who was handling NXT at the time, took a tried and tested route of building a dominant star in Baron Corbin by having him squash a slew of enhancement talents. It also helped that they embraced Baron Corbin's outsider role. He wasn't like the others, but he was kicking some ass. He got his first televised feud against the undefeated Bull Dempsey, who he beat to cement himself as one of the more notable up-and-comers in WWE's NXT. During his feud with Rhino, yes, that Rhino, he turned into a real bad guy and pretty much stayed that way for over 8 years. It was a role that suited him well, and after beating Rhino, he had his biggest feud to date with the recently signed all-time great badass in Samoa Joe, who leapt into the scene of NXT with a ton of credibility, championships to his credit, and years of television experience. This was a real level up for Corbin. NXT in 2015 was red hot, to say the least. In the middle of all that, Corbin found himself on the card facing Samoa Joe at the all-time classic NXT TakeOver show in Brooklyn, probably one of the biggest shows that NXT's ever done. He had come such a long way in such a short amount of time and didn't have to take the long path that others did to get there. He may have lost the match, but that wasn't the point. He continued to be a staple of the increasingly popular and exciting NXT brand. He managed to make it to the finals of the first Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic tournament when he teamed up with Rhino and ended up losing to Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. After giving Apollo Crews his first pinfall loss on NXT television, his run quickly came to an end there. He was involved in a mix-up where things came to determining a contender for the NXT Championship, but the top of the card was just way too stacked for him to break through. It didn't matter too much because he still had a noticeable, lasting feud with the hottest newcomer of the time, Austin Aries. Austin Aries was still quite popular back then as well, another guy who jumped into NXT with televised experience from Impact Wrestling and Ring of Honor. Getting to work with these experienced wrestlers truly rubbed off on Corbin, and Baron Corbin began to transition into the main roster. It made sense to put over a newcomer who was technically a veteran. WrestleMania 32 was when Baron Corbin truly arrived on the big stage of WWE. In front of the biggest crowd in WWE history, he won the third Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. That's right, very briefly after making his way to the main roster, he got to win one of the bigger undercard prizes that you could get at one of the biggest shows. Up to this point, Cesaro and Big Show won the trophy. Cesaro's win was supposed to mean something, but never really came into anything special. In the case of the Big Show, he wasn't exactly the world title winner in 2015. So when Baron Corbin, who had never really endeared himself to the main roster, won this big prize, the crowd went wild. This was an NXT guy who was relatively new to the main roster doing something significant on WrestleMania weekend. In a WrestleMania setting that was considered disastrous for some highly questionable booking and blah, 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 it was one of the more talked about moments during the weekend. Timing of his debut couldn't have been any better. WrestleMania 32 might be up there as one of the not-so-great manias, but the period after that, maybe around 2016, was a pretty hot one for the TV PG era of WWE, but for some odd reason, Baron Corbin's early character arc on the main roster was gonna take a little bit of a valley. He feuded with the future WWE Hall of Famer Dolph Ziggler, and WWE surprisingly had him lose in his first pay-per-view match on a freaking roll-up. Not our guy Baron, but hey, you're getting in there with a guy who can legitimately go with anyone. It's Dolph Ziggler. It's a zigzag man who's gonna show off. He's here to show the world. And it was just a kickoff match, so calm down, Corbinites. If you're a Baron Corbin fan, you're a Corbinite. The following month, Corbin would get revenge in another pay-per-view kickoff match against Dolph Ziggler, and this was a few months before Ziggler would get his real great peak period in WWE. Another kickoff match would follow, this time with Corbin picking up the win at the Extreme Rules event, but the WWE 2016 draft marked a huge turning point for the company. It was a time in their history when the roster was growing in size, stacked with high-quality talent, and people fighting for spots, and Corbin was one of those guys. You could even argue that this may have been the best roster that WWE had in terms of how many top-level superstars there were. And it made sense for WWE to bring the brand split back between Raw and SmackDown, giving more people more opportunities. Corbin was drafted to SmackDown, and it was a pretty solid move to get ahead of WWE's future top villains and truly build something for himself. Rumors started to come out saying that WWE's head honcho Vince McMahon himself personally saw Braun Strowman and Baron Corbin as his two top new prospects to build, two guys he saw as future main event stars. With Strowman being on Raw and Corbin being on SmackDown, it was the perfect place, the perfect time, and the right circumstances for Corbin to sleaze his way to the top. He began feuding with guys like Kalisto, Apollo Crews, and Jack Swagger, coming out on top each time. He was supposed to be a part of the incredible Team SmackDown at Survivor Series, but thanks to the masked luchador Kalisto, he was taken out, and that added to their rivalry. But by the end of the year, he managed to get a shot at the WWE Championship for the first time in his career. It was a real step up. Chasing the title with Dolph Ziggler, someone he was already familiar with, he would have to tangle with the phenomenal one, AJ Styles, and at this point, he simply just maybe wasn't more phenomenal than AJ Styles. But it was a 21-minute showcase of what Corbin could do at the top level of WWE on SmackDown. Some peaks followed for Corbin as well, like at the 2017 Royal Rumble when he eliminated the monstrous Braun Strowman and got one of the loudest reactions of the night. He was even able to defeat three former world champions in AJ Styles, Dean Ambrose, and The Miz in one match, getting back into the WWE title mix at Elimination Chamber. That's right, he was featured in the Elimination Chamber, though he didn't leave it with the WWE Championship. That would be Bray Wyatt. It was another sign of how Corbin, as a villain, was in the mix with the top names. He was also competing regularly for the WWE Intercontinental Championship, even though he was coming up short against names like Dean Ambrose. So where would Corbin land in the mix with WrestleMania season? Well, he unfortunately wouldn't make the main card, and surprisingly, neither would Dean Ambrose. But they would tangle for the Intercontinental Championship on the kickoff show, which at the time was still a significant deal, just definitely not the same thing as being on the main card. After that match, where Ambrose was able to get ahead, he went over to Monday at Raw, and Corbin tried his luck with the United States Championship. That didn't work out for him either, but he managed to instantly reach the next level when he got the rocket ship in the form of the Money in the Bank briefcase in 2017. Corbin in the multi-man ladder match was able to defeat AJ Styles, get one over on Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler, along with Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura, to hold the Cash In Anywhere world title shot in the briefcase. He was now truly in the mix whenever he wanted to be for the world title. And it's one of those true signs that WWE and people like Mr. McMahon have some really high hopes for you in the future. Not all fans were buying into Corbin Mania or the idea of him being a world champion superstar, but this was a fast-track idea. Sometimes that works. During a match between WWE champion at the time Jinder Mahal and John Cena, we never thought we'd say this sentence, but during that match, Corbin tried to cash in his briefcase. Cena was the first man ever to fail at a Money in the Bank cash-in himself, so it only made sense that he would be the one to cause Corbin's failed cash-in as well. Looking back, that seemed like the closest Baron Corbin was ever going to get to sniffing a world championship. It was a truly epic failure that was entertaining for the live TV audience and those in the arena. You know, some could say, is this a sign that WWE isn't fully prepared to go with Corbin as the champion? Yeah, that's an obvious observation as well. Corbin would get his revenge against John Cena in the months that would follow at SummerSlam. For a newcomer, facing John Cena at SummerSlam would be quite the dream, especially as an up-and-coming villain. The match really just felt like it was WWE wanting to give Cena his first SummerSlam win, though, in 7 years. A feel-good Cena moment at the expense of Corbin. But this was a sign of WWE saying, hey Corbin, you're a big bad guy, you gotta go up against the biggest good guy. Still a sign of what they thought he could do in the future. In October of 2017, though, Corbin would truly take advantage of circumstances to his own benefit. In a triple threat match for the United States Championship, the phenomenal one AJ Styles, once again the defending champion, this time against Corbin and another challenger, the Perfect 10, Ty Dillinger. In 19 minutes, it would be Corbin who would escape with the title from Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. The title change was a truly breakthrough moment for Corbin and was critically well received, getting some moderate reviews, including a 3.5 stars from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It was Corbin's first piece of gold in WWE, and it took him 5 years to get there. No matter how much people hated Corbin, though that was the idea, it was hard to deny he deserved it. 2017, though, would have a lot of different issues going on in WWE that would come down from the top, and many people would get affected, and Corbin would be no different than those that were affected by these weird creative decisions. So there wasn't any actual plan in place for Baron Corbin as US champion, reportedly. Instead, he just lost the title to the show-off Dolph Ziggler in a little over 2 months. After a quick pre-WrestleMania detour where he unsuccessfully challenged for the WWE Championship as more of a placeholder to get that champion ready for the big show, he was once again slotted in the WrestleMania pre-show Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. This was probably more disappointing than his failed Money in the Bank cash-in, though that was effective for his character. This was just showing how much he fell back down the card. Just 2 years prior, he was in a hotter spot at WrestleMania, and the next year he was bumped down to the pre-show. It seemed like there was really nothing in place for him and for his truly villainous character. And it was sort of definitive of WWE at the time. A lot of yo-yo bookings, start and stop pushes with several different people, specifically in the mid to upper card region. And this isn't even mentioning the fact that Corbin was still one of the more regularly used superstars who had a lot of screen time. A move from SmackDown over to Raw proved to be a promising one in the early going. he was chosen to be Stephanie McMahon's representative, kicking off his Commissioner Corbin story. He shaved his head, changed his entire appearance, and turned up his real D-bag meter to 100. Yes, if you have a D-bag meter, that's your problem. He had a real power trip. Yes, he was truly drunk on power, not booze, and even put himself in world title matches as an authority figure. Is that how it works? It was kind of the same story for Corbin in terms of his in-ring character. He was an unrelenting sleaze. He was facing some of the big guns on Raw, but was usually used to make them look better. This was a strong role for him to be in. Once again, in WWE, you don't have to win matches all of the time to win overall. This was maybe the peak of him in WWE as an on-screen character. It was a role that perfectly suited him because of how unlikable he was and how unlikable Corbin was. You could hear people say it in the crowd around that time. Baron Corbin clearly was beginning to feel the effects of this and compounded it over the next few years. Wasn't exactly bad. Corbin was an enhancement guy by any means, but maybe the top one to enhance people and get a crowd to pop for a storyline on the receiving end of a beatdown. The commissioner angle ended when the McMahons and Triple H promised to listen to the fans and take full charge of WWE once again. But the story spun off into WrestleMania season, and the much beloved but on his way out Kurt Angle announced that he would have his farewell match in the shadow of New York City at WrestleMania 35, and it would be against the despised Baron Corbin. The idea of the match was unfortunately not that exciting. Fans were hoping to see maybe something a little bit more dream matchy for Angle in his final bout at the Show of Shows, like say John Cena, and have a full circle moment, but it didn't work out that way. WWE didn't seem to have anything special planned for Kurt Angle, but truly, it did feel like a moment that Corbin got to share with him. It was a WrestleMania moment for Kurt Angle and a WrestleMania moment for Baron Corbin. Maybe not the moment that some people had planned for. According to Kurt Angle himself, the match was basically a filler between Triple H and Batista and the big main event. When you look at the fact that one of the greatest wrestlers ever to do it had a flat 6 minutes for his farewell, it seems to kind of make sense that Angle had that observation. Even the Finn Balor-Bobby Lashley match before the main event got a whopping 4 minutes bell to bell. That was a weird WrestleMania, by the way, the one that went way too long. Still, the fact that Baron Corbin has the accomplishment of being the last man to face Kurt Angle under his belt is a pretty cool thing that no one can take away from him at all. Soon after WrestleMania 35, he became a contender for the Universal Champion Seth Rollins. On the women's side of things, Lacey Evans had connived herself to become the contender for Becky Lynch's Raw Women's Championship. The two stories converged in WWE, acknowledging that Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch were a real-life couple. After a chaotic Stomping Grounds pay-per-view, we got you remembering that one, yeah. Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans were set up to have a match against Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch for Extreme Rules. Yes, mixed tag team action month to month. But the crazy part about the match was that both the Universal Championship and the Raw Women's Championship were both put on the line. On the other hand, if Corbin and Evans lost, it would be it for them, and they couldn't really pursue the championships if they were going after them. The match wasn't super notable, except for the one moment where Baron Corbin hit Becky Lynch with the end of days. Ouch. Still, the match was also met with Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch getting the big win, and they did that and drifted apart on television, probably realizing they were better off not using their real-life relationship on camera. But it was another failed world title pursuit by Corbin. But not that big of a failure. Things were still around the corner for him. He went on to win the King of the Ring tournament. Yeah, around the same time when WWE was renaming Chad Gable Shorty G, that was turbulent for him. It was still steady for Corbin to be the bad dude who did bad things to get ahead and defeat multiple people to become King Corbin. It was a pretty decent year for Corbin overall. He found himself in another winning accolade, getting those world title glory opportunities, but at the end of the year, it happened. It was bad. it was pretty bad. You would think Baron Corbin having a rivalry against the top star of the industry at the time, Roman Reigns, would be a good thing. But then there was the dog food incident. That's right. They attacked him in a feud that was built around dog food. That was really regarded as a whole lot of dog crap. It was technically the final major feud that Roman Reigns had before he became the tribal chief. Yeah, it was the peak of the big dog, so they did dog food. Why did they do this? There was that whole thing with Goldberg too, but that didn't actually materialize into a match. It was really incomplete for a couple of years. But Baron Corbin became the last person to pin Roman Reigns, in a crazy record that would last until the summer of 2023. So before the tribal chief happened, Baron Corbin had to, walk the big dog one more time. It was always kind of funny to think that Jey Uso before Cody Rhodes and before Solo Sikoa, Baron Corbin was the last guy to get the better of Roman Reigns. Things really started to dip for him though in 2020, as most of the wrestling world and the entire world was really feeling upside down, and he was really feeling the effects of it by that point. He faced mid-card comedy character Elias in an insignificant match at WrestleMania. Yeah, the one that wasn't in front of fans, and it really wasn't doing much at all, but yeah, that whole time was weird. He was still King Corbin throughout 2020, and it was the most forgettable year of his up until he signed with WWE. But as we mentioned, those no-fan days were pretty weird as it was anyway. He was going up against names like Matt Riddle and Rey Mysterio, and he was in a stagnant, always in the mid-card, never above it type position. His King Corbin gimmick ended when he lost his crown to Shinsuke Nakamura. It actually began what should have never been an incredible angle. Baron Corbin was repeatedly dealing with a good old case of bad luck. His appearance changed. He was in a disheveled shirt, sometimes with stains on it. He had an unkept beard, an unshaved head. He didn't look slick and ready. He looked like he was being beaten down by life, or someone just picked him out of a trash can. And in story, he lost everything. All of his money, his savings, even his wife and kids. Yeah, he was starting to act erratically, and somehow it turned out to be some of the best character work he had done in over 8 years. It was laughably dark and weird, but he played it well. Some, though, feel WWE dropped the ball with Baron around this time. His character is suffering loss after loss in every facet of life, and in the ring was essentially karma coming back to bite him right on the ass. It was a perfect way to turn him into maybe a babyface good guy. Could that have been the direction he was going to go in for the first time in his career? People could genuinely say they were looking forward to seeing maybe a different creative direction with Baron Corbin coming out of this very, very dark period. What should have been an incredible story led to him realizing the error of his ways and working his way back up turned out to be a complete doozy. It was one of the laziest ways to change his character, insinuated that he gambled his way back into luck in Las Vegas. That's right, he won his way out of misfortune. Yeah, he became Happy Corbin and got Madcap Moss by his side, and he told lame jokes and yeah, they had fake laughter. Corbin still wasn't doing too much until he faced Drew McIntyre. Yes, on the route to WrestleMania 38 in Texas, he was always getting under Drew's skin and saying some very personal things about Drew McIntyre. Yeah, and they finally got to meet in that massive stadium in Texas, and the well-protected finisher that Baron Corbin had, a move that if he put it on you, you didn't kick out of it, the end of days, would be a move that Drew McIntyre kicked out of. Drew got the big win over him on a strong undercard match. Maybe Baron Corbin's best WrestleMania match to date. It was kind of like Razor Ramon in the thing. He simply wouldn't hit the move if he wasn't going to win, so the fact that Drew kicked out of it made it a compelling thing. It was one of the more protected finishers that WWE had, and fans seemed to recognize that, especially when the air sucked out of the stadium. Minus his win over Kurt Angle in 2019, he never won any other singles matches, though, at WrestleMania. It wasn't a surprise that Baron Corbin was getting stressed out with the turbulent state of his character in WWE. Even though he got to feud with his old friend and football pro roommate, Pat McAfee, who is now a fixture of WWE on commentary and during the occasional match, they would face each other at SummerSlam in a very, very strong, underrated match. He was quickly turning, though, into the enhancement guy, a believable villain you could put in a match, but was simply a utility player. He was getting the TV time, but nothing was getting past a certain point. We bet you hardly remember the period when JBL became his manager. We can't blame you, there was really nothing significant that came out of it. Corbin would only get a new lease on life with his career after the 2023 draft. He became a free agent, that's right, undrafted, and went back to NXT after 7 years. It was a drastically different NXT that he was coming back to, but it proved to be the most exciting run he could have expected. Yes, he was revitalized. He began to get respect from the crowd in NXT, and he was kicking ass. When he was going to face the newcomer, Gable Steveson, yes, who was supposed to be Kurt Angle's successor as an Olympic gold medalist, Corbin received the cheers over the Olympic gold medalist. It marked a huge turning point in terms of his fan favoritism and popularity. It's hard to believe that the run only lasted for a year. And in that time, he managed to feud with top guys like Carmelo Hayes, Ilya Dragunov, and Braun Breaker. Oh, and he defeated Braun Breaker as well. Just how he paired up with Rhino in NXT before, after beating him, he became tag team partners with Braun Breaker and ended up winning the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Tournament, in what felt like a full circle moment for a guy who was a part of that NXT Black and Gold class. In NXT, Corbin was getting that respect, and he even turned into a good guy for the first time in nearly a decade. The momentum rolled in as he and Breaker won the NXT Tag Team Championships, and he gave Corbin his first taste of gold in 6 years. It's a shame that it was a short-lived run that lasted less than 2 months, because both Corbin and Breaker were main event roster-bound once more. For Baron Corbin, it was supposed to be another opportunity to shine on that main stage after getting a kind of revitalization in NXT. Unfortunately, he just never fit into Triple H and his new creative team's plans overall, and found himself maybe on the low end, near catering, making a few occasional appearances. He just wasn't as much of a Triple H guy as he was maybe a Vince McMahon guy. That is a surface-level observation, but maybe the writing was on the wall. Why he wasn't retained in NXT if there were no plans for him in the main roster isn't exactly known, and it isn't exactly clear to understand why that might be. But it has to be one of those decisions in 2024 that makes you think, why? Especially if you follow everything week to week with WWE. Baron Corbin deserved a shot at getting TV time like he did before after rejuvenating himself in NXT. And if you look at the consistency of WWE in his WWE career, he stayed with it, while maybe the inconsistencies of him being featured weren't exactly there. Sure, on one hand, you could argue that Baron Corbin of 2016-17 wasn't a world title caliber superstar, but there's another big factor. WWE's creative chaos at the time didn't really benefit him. He played well in the roles he was given. He scored in the position he was put in. If this was football, he was still playing his part if the team wasn't winning overall. Looking at how well thought out storylines are nowadays, it's clear just to see how little organization there might have been, and how someone like Corbin, who was hot at the time, wasn't as hot now as he should be. Baron Corbin was actively put in good storyline programs, given a regular character. What's to say he couldn't achieve that and all and more and then some? It's clear looking back at it, the stagnation he faced for years and personal discontentment was maybe a large reason why he couldn't fulfill the potential he obviously had. Hopefully, the end of Baron Corbin's WWE career will be the start of something incredible outside of WWE. Whether he's going to remain in wrestling or not isn't exactly clear. If he does remain in pro wrestling, he could still follow a certain course and come back when he has a lot more star power and leverage to negotiate even more creative fulfillment on another WWE run, as others have done in WWE. It's going to be interesting to see what's next for him. It's quite sad that his 12-year stint in WWE ended the way it did, but it's obvious that both in the McMahon times and Triple H times, there was no idea how to harness the potential he had to get so many people to boo him. What did you think of Baron Corbin? What do you want to see him do next? Let us know in the comments below.